Quan Jiwon sat at the long table and watched the alien delegates laugh at her. For 3 weeks she had tried to be patient. For 3 weeks she had smiled and nodded and made compromises, but nothing was ever good enough for them. The Galactic Assembly Hall was massive. It floated in space above a planet called Viridian Prime. Inside, hundreds of different alien species gathered for meetings that happened only once every 10 years. Humanity was new here. They had been invited to talk about trade and which parts of space belonged to whom. Jiwon had thought this would be simple. Humans had good technology. They made medicines that worked better than most alien drugs. They built ships that flew faster. They created entertainment that everyone seemed to love. Surely the galaxy would want to work with them. She had been wrong. Park Hyun-woo sat beside her, his face tight with anger. He was her second in command, the man who handled all the numbers and economic data. He had shown the aliens proof that human trade would help everyone. They had ignored him. Across the table, Ambassador Velthar from the Krithian Dominion sneered at them. His reptilian face twisted into what might have been a smile. The Krithians were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They thought that meant they could treat everyone else like servants. Every time Jiwon made a proposal, Velthar found a reason to reject it. When humans offered to share a trade route through empty space, the Krithians demanded 90% of all profits. When humans suggested sharing resources from planets nobody lived on, other aliens suddenly claimed those planets were sacred or historically important. The worst part was how they talked to her. Like she was a child. Like humanity was too stupid to understand how things worked. They used big words and complicated rules that seemed to change every day. When Jiwon pointed out the contradictions, they laughed. High Counselor Rixmora ran the meetings. She was supposed to be neutral, making sure everyone got a fair chance to speak. But Jiwon noticed that Rixmora always sided with the powerful species. She let them interrupt. She let them insult. She never told them to stop. Today was supposed to be the final day. Jiwon stood to give her last presentation. She had prepared a simple, fair agreement. Humans would trade technology and medicine. In return, they wanted access to certain space routes and the right to settle on 3 uninhabited planets. It was reasonable. It hurt nobody. She got halfway through her speech when Velthar interrupted. "Enough," he said, his voice loud and harsh. "We have wasted 3 weeks listening to this primitive species pretend they have something valuable to offer." Jiwon stopped talking. The room went quiet. Velthar stood up, looking down at her. "Your technology is basic. Your economy is weak. Your culture is meaningless. Perhaps if humanity actually had value, we might take you seriously. You should be grateful we even allowed you into this chamber." The chamber erupted. Aliens from dozens of species laughed and made jokes. Some spoke in their own languages, but Jiwon's translator caught enough words. Primitive, worthless, amusing, children playing at diplomacy. Park Hyun-woo started to stand, his hands clenched into fists. Jiwon put a hand on his arm. She looked at Velthar, then at Rixmora, who was smiling slightly, making no effort to restore order. Something inside Jiwon went very cold and very calm. She reached down and gathered her data tablets. She organized them neatly, taking her time. The laughter in the chamber slowly died as aliens realized she was packing up. "What are you doing?" Velthar asked. Jiwon looked at him. Her voice was quiet, but in the silent chamber everyone heard. "We're leaving." "Taking a break?" Rixmora asked. "We can reconvene after lunch." "No," Jiwon said. She stood holding her materials. "We're leaving permanently. Consider this humanity's official withdrawal from all galactic diplomatic relations. Effective immediately." The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens shouted questions. Some laughed, thinking it was a joke. Velthar's face showed confusion, then anger. Jiwon nodded to Park Hyun-woo and the rest of the human delegation. They stood together, gathering their things. Not rushing. Not angry. "Just done. You cannot simply leave," Velthar shouted. "We have not dismissed you." Jiwon walked toward the exit. She paused at the door and turned back. "You don't get to dismiss us. We were never your servants. We came here as equals, hoping for fair treatment. Instead, you gave us contempt, so we're done. Humanity will have nothing further to do with the Galactic Assembly, or any species represented here." "This is foolish," Rixmora called out. "You need us more than we need you." Jiwon smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I suppose we'll see about that." She walked out. The human delegation followed. Behind them, the assembly hall filled with confused voices and angry shouts. Nobody tried to stop them. They probably thought humans would come crawling back within a week, begging to be let back in. As they walked down the corridor toward their ship, Park Hyun-woo spoke quietly. That was either brilliant or insane. Ji-won kept walking. It was necessary. They'll learn? Learn what? That contempt has a cost, and they're about to pay it. 3 months passed. The galaxy expected humanity to return, apologizing and asking for another chance. Instead, there was only silence. Trade Minister Kolvek stared at his communication screen with growing panic. He had sent 17 messages to human trade stations. Not one had been answered. His entire business depended on buying human-made goods and selling them to other species. Now his warehouses sat empty. He tried again, recording a personal message. This is Trade Minister Kolvex of the Velkai Consortium. I have valid contracts with human suppliers. Please respond. I need to discuss our arrangements. The message bounced back, marked as undeliverable. All human communication channels had been shut down. Kolvex decided to visit the human trade station in person. He took his fastest ship and traveled to New Sol Orbital, a large human station that usually bustled with activity. When he arrived, the station's defense grid activated. A human voice came through his ship's speakers. Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted human space. Turn back immediately. This is Trade Minister Kolvex, he said quickly. I have legitimate business here. I've been trading with this station for 5 years. All trade agreements with non-human entities were terminated 3 months ago. You have no business here. Leave now, but I have contracts, legal documents. You can't just... Commander Lee Minho's voice cut him off. We can, and we did. Your contracts became void the moment humanity withdrew from galactic relations. You have 30 seconds to change course, or we will escort you out by force. Kolvex looked at his scanner. 3 human warships had appeared, surrounding his vessel. Their weapons were powered up. He turned his ship around and fled. The same scene played out across the galaxy. Human colonies closed their borders. Human ships refused to dock at alien stations. Human scientists stopped attending conferences. Human musicians canceled their tours. Human companies terminated every contract with non-human businesses. The Velkai Consortium sent a diplomatic delegation to Earth itself. They were turned away before they even reached the planet. No explanation. No discussion. Just a simple message. Leave. Ambassador Velthar finally understood that humans were serious. He tried to contact Quan Jiwan directly, sending personal messages, offering better terms, even hinting at an apology. Every message was deleted automatically without being read. He decided to visit the human embassy on Viridian Prime. Perhaps he could speak to someone face to face. When he arrived, he found the building dark and empty. The doors were locked. A simple sign hung on the front entrance. Permanently closed. All staff have returned to Earth. Velthar stood there for a long time, staring at that sign. Around him, other aliens gathered, all looking confused and worried. Many had business with humanity. All had been cut off completely. The galactic news networks began reporting on the situation. At first, they treated it like an interesting story. Humans stage dramatic walkout, the headlines read. New species throws tantrum. But as weeks turned into months, the tone changed. Human silence continues. Trade disruption spread. Where did all the humans go? Admiral Thexon of the Krithian military had a different problem. His fleet had been working with human ships to patrol dangerous areas of space. The humans had technology that detected pirates better than anything the Krithians owned. They had agreed to share that technology. Now the human ships were gone. The technology sharing had stopped. Pirate attacks increased immediately. Thexon's superiors demanded answers. He had none to give. He tried to contact the human commanders he had worked with, men and women he had fought beside, people he thought were friends. None responded. It was as if humanity had built a wall around itself and nothing could get through. In the Galactic Assembly, High Counselor Rix Mora called an emergency meeting. The chamber was tense. Many species had complaints. Many demanded action. This cannot continue, a delegate from the Shorvik Empire said. Humanity must be made to see reason. They are being childish. Childish? Another delegate responded. They are being effective. My medical suppliers are in crisis. We cannot get the equipment we need. Then we should offer them better terms, someone suggested. We already tried, Rixmora said quietly. They're not listening. Velthar stood up. Many eyes turned to him. Some were angry. After all, his insults had started this mess. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should consider that humans meant what they said. They left. They're not coming back. Ridiculous, someone shouted. They need us. Do they? Velthar asked. We assumed they did. But they've been gone for 3 months. Their economy hasn't collapsed. Their colonies are fine. Meanwhile, we're the ones suffering. The chamber fell silent. Nobody wanted to admit it, but Velthar was right. Humanity wasn't the one hurting from this separation. Across the galaxy, millions of beings went about their daily lives, slowly realizing something was missing. The medicine they took was human-made. The shows they watched were human-produced. The ships they flew used human parts. The security systems protecting their data were human-designed, and now it was all going away. The galaxy had called humanity primitive and worthless. Now the galaxy was learning exactly how much humanity was worth, and the price was getting higher every day. 6 months after the walkout, the consequences became impossible to ignore. Dr. Yoon Jae-min walked through the halls of the Galactic Medical Association headquarters. He was one of the few humans who had stayed behind when the others left. His job was to help manage the transition and close down human involvement in galactic healthcare. Every day he received desperate requests. Hospitals needed replacement parts for surgical machines. Clinics had run out of human-made medicines. Entire medical systems were breaking down. A Velkai doctor approached him in the hallway. Dr. Yoon, please. We have patients dying because we cannot get the cancer treatment drugs. You must help us. Yoon looked at her with sympathy but shook his head. I have no authority to override Earth's decision. If you need human medical supplies, you'll have to request them through normal channels. We've tried. Nobody responds. Then I'm sorry, Yoon said. I truly am. But this is what your leaders chose when they mocked us. The doctor stared at him, tears in her eyes. I never mocked anyone. Why are we being punished? Yoon had no answer for her. He walked away, feeling the weight of every sick patient who would suffer because of political games played by people far above them. The medical crisis was just the beginning. Technology companies discovered that 40% of their products used human-designed computer chips. When those chips broke, there were no replacements. Entire factories shut down. Captain Thronkel sat in his office looking at bankruptcy papers. His shipping company had operated 12 freight vessels. All 12 used human-made gravity drives. Those drives needed maintenance every 6 months. It had been 6 months. His ships were starting to malfunction. He had tried to hire engineers who understood human technology. Most didn't. The few who claimed they could help wanted 3 times the normal price. Even then, they couldn't get the necessary parts. Thronkal wasn't alone. Thousands of businesses across the galaxy faced the same problem. Ships grounded, factories closed, supply chains collapsed. Unemployment rose. The technology sector suffered even worse. Human programming languages had become standard across the galaxy. Most software was written in these languages. Human encryption kept communication networks secure. Human artificial intelligence managed logistics for countless corporations. Now none of these systems received updates. Security flaws went unpatched. Hackers exploited the vulnerabilities. Criminal organizations launched cyber attacks. Within months, digital crime increased by 300%. Scientist Crix worked in a laboratory on the planet Thelos. She had been developing a cure for a disease that killed millions every year. Her breakthrough had come from combining Thelian biology knowledge with human biotech. The human equipment in her lab had stopped working properly. She couldn't get it fixed. She couldn't buy new equipment. Her research ground to a halt. People would keep dying because politicians had insulted the wrong species. The entertainment industry collapsed fastest of all. 70% of the most popular music in the galaxy came from human artists. The biggest movies were human-made. The most played games were human-designed. All of it vanished overnight. Streaming services lost most of their content. Concert venues sat empty. Gaming platforms crashed. Billions of beings suddenly had nothing to watch, nothing to listen to, nothing to play. It seemed like a small thing compared to medical emergencies and economic collapse. But it affected daily life. People noticed. They complained. They wanted their entertainment back. High Counselor Rixmora called another emergency assembly meeting. The atmosphere was different now. Fear had replaced arrogance. "We must take action," a delegate insisted. "Our economies are failing." "What action?" someone else asked. "They won't talk to us," Velthar stood. The chamber quieted. Everyone knew he had caused this mess. "We could use military force," he said slowly. "Force them back to the negotiating table." Several delegates nodded. Others looked uncertain. Admiral Thexan, attending as a military observer, spoke up. "That would be unwise." "Why?" Velthar demanded. "They're a young species. We have superior numbers, do we?" Thexan asked. "What do we actually know about human military capabilities? They've been very careful about what they showed us. We assumed they were weak because they were new. But they built all this technology we're now missing. What makes you think their weapons are primitive?" The chamber fell silent. Nobody had a good answer. "Besides," Thexan continued, "attacking them would prove them right. They said we treated them with contempt. Invading their space would only confirm it." The meeting ended with no decisions made. The assembly was paralyzed, unable to fix a problem they had created. Meanwhile, human colonies thrived. Free from galactic regulations and interference, they grew stronger. Their economy boomed. Their technology advanced. They traded among themselves, completely self-sufficient. Some humans suggested reaching out, offering to help species that were suffering. Quan Ji-won refused. "We offered help before," she said in a private meeting. "We offered cooperation and fair trade. They laughed at us. Now they need to understand that actions have consequences." Park Hyun-woo agreed. "If we help them now, they'll learn nothing. They'll think they can insult us and will come running back the moment they need something. No, let them feel the cost of their contempt." And so the galaxy suffered, not because of war, not because of natural disaster, but because they had called humanity worthless, and humanity had decided to show them exactly what they were worth. 1 year after the walkout, the Krithian Dominion made a terrible mistake. The Krithian economy was in crisis. Their people were unemployed and angry. Food production had dropped because their agricultural technology depended on human-designed systems. The government needed someone to blame. They blamed humanity. General Kuthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at a fleet of 200 warships. It was an impressive sight. The largest military operation the Krithians had launched in decades. His orders were simple. Go to the border of human space and demand they resume trade and cooperation. If they refused, blockade their territory until they agreed. The Dominion's leaders believed overwhelming force would make humans see reason. Kathax had doubts. He remembered Admiral Thexan's warnings about assuming human weakness. But orders were orders. He took his fleet to the human border. Commander Lee Min-ho sat in his command center on the human border station. His sensors picked up the Krithian fleet long before they arrived. 200 ships. A show of force meant to intimidate. He sent a message to Earth. Defense Secretary Choi Yuna responded within minutes. "Do not fire first," she ordered. "But make it clear we will defend ourselves." Lee Min-ho assembled his response, 30 human vessels. Much smaller than the Krithian force. But these were ships the galaxy had never seen before. New designs. New technology. The two fleets met at the border. Kathax broadcast on all frequencies. "Attention human vessels. This is General Kathax of the Krithian Dominion. By authority of the Galactic Assembly, I order you to stand down and accept our terms. Resume all trade and diplomatic relations immediately." Lee Min-ho's response was cold and calm. "General Kathax, you are in violation of human territorial sovereignty. The Galactic Assembly has no authority over humanity. We withdrew from your organization. You have 1 hour to turn your fleet around and leave. This is your only warning," Kathax laughed. His crew heard it echo through the bridge. "Commander, I have 200 warships. You have 30. I am giving you a chance to surrender peacefully. Don't be foolish." "You have 59 minutes, Lee Min-ho replied, then cut the channel. Kathax waited 30 minutes, expecting the humans to reconsider. When they didn't respond, he gave the order. "All ships, advance. Prepare to engage." The Krithian fleet moved forward. The human ships held their position. Then the battle began. It lasted 17 minutes. The human ships moved with impossible speed. Their weapons hit with precision that shouldn't have been possible at those ranges. They didn't destroy the Krithian vessels. Instead, they systematically disabled them. One by one, Krithian warships lost power. Their engines shut down. Their weapons stopped working. Their shields failed. But life support remained intact. The crews were unharmed. Kathax watched in horror as his mighty fleet became a collection of floating debris. His own ship was the last to be disabled. He tried everything, every tactic he knew. Nothing worked. The humans were simply too fast, too accurate, too advanced. When his ship's power died, he sat in his command chair, unable to believe what had happened. Li Minho's voice came through the emergency channel. "General Kathax, your fleet is disabled. Your crews are alive. We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. Tow your ships out of our territory, and tell your leaders this. Next time we won't be so gentle. Humanity does not want war, but we will defend ourselves with whatever force necessary. Leave. Now." The Krithians called for rescue ships. It took days to tow all 200 disabled vessels out of human space. During that entire time, the human ships watched, weapons ready but never firing another shot. The recordings of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species watched the same footage. 200 Krithian warships disabled in 17 minutes by 30 human vessels. The galaxy had called humanity primitive. Now they saw exactly how advanced human technology really was. Defense Secretary Choi Yuna gave a press conference. Her statement was broadcast to every planet in the galaxy. Humanity sought peaceful cooperation. We came to the Galactic Assembly with respect and fair proposals. We were met with contempt and insults. We chose to walk away rather than accept such treatment. She paused, looking directly at the camera. Today, the Krithian Dominion attempted to force us back through military intimidation. They failed. Let this be a lesson to all species. Humanity will defend our borders and our dignity. We will not be bullied. We will not be forced. Any attempt to violate our sovereignty will be met with appropriate force. We still want peace, she continued. We still want cooperation. But it must be on terms of mutual respect and equality. Nothing less will be acceptable. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't coming back. The galaxy would have to change if they wanted human participation. Ambassador Velthar watched Choi Yuna's speech from his home. He had been removed from his position after the walkout. His career was ruined, his reputation destroyed, and now his species had been humiliated in front of the entire galaxy. He finally understood the magnitude of what he had done. His insults hadn't just offended humanity. They had started a chain of events that changed everything. He began writing an apology. A real one, taking full responsibility for his actions. But when he showed it to the Dominion's government, they refused to send it. Krithian pride wouldn't allow them to admit they were wrong, so the apology stayed in his desk drawer. And the galaxy kept suffering. Meanwhile, human colonies continued to thrive. They didn't need the galaxy, but the galaxy desperately needed them, and that need grew more desperate with each passing day. 18 months after the walkout, the galaxy was in chaos. The galactic economy had officially entered a recession. Governments faced protests from angry citizens. Several minor species were on the verge of collapse. The major powers clung to their pride while their worlds suffered. Prime Minister Kim Sora sat in her office on Earth, reviewing reports. Every day brought requests from alien species. Most were demands or threats. A few were genuine pleas for help. All were ignored. Park Hyun-woo entered her office. "There's someone here to see you," he said. Ambassador Lix from the Xylar Collective. She came alone. No escorts, no official delegation. She's asking for 5 minutes of your time. Kim Sora raised an eyebrow. The Xylar? They weren't at the negotiations, were they? They were, Hyun-woo said. But they stayed quiet. Never insulted us. Never joined in the mockery. They just sat there and said nothing. Cowardice is its own form of contempt, Kim Sora said. But I'm curious. Let her in. Ambassador Lix was young, maybe the equivalent of 30 human years. She looked nervous but determined. She bowed respectfully when she entered. "Prime Minister, thank you for seeing me." "You have 5 minutes, Kim Sora said. Lix didn't waste time. "My people are suffering. Our economy has collapsed. We can't get the medical supplies we need. Children are dying of diseases that were curable before. I'm not here to make demands or threats. I'm here to beg." Kim Sora's expression didn't change. Your government sat in silence while humanity was insulted and dismissed. "Why should we help you now?" "We shouldn't have stayed silent," Lix said. "You're right. We were cowards. We were afraid of the major powers. We thought if we stayed quiet, they would leave us alone. We were wrong. She took a breath. I wasn't the ambassador then. I was just an aide. I watched what happened and I felt ashamed. But I did nothing. Just like my government. We failed you. We failed ourselves. Kim Sora leaned forward. And now? Now I'm asking if there's a path forward, Lix said. Not for special treatment. Not for mercy. Just a chance to do better. To acknowledge our mistakes and try to fix them. Kim Sora studied her for a long moment. Your honesty is noted. But honesty alone isn't enough. If your government wants to trade with humanity, they must formally apologize. Not just for staying silent, but for being complicit in our humiliation. They must acknowledge humanity as equals, and they must publicly condemn what happened at Viridian Prime. Lix nodded. I'll bring that message to my leaders. If they agree, Kim Sora continued, we'll negotiate a bilateral trade agreement, just between our two peoples. Fair terms, equal partnership, but they must take the first step. Thank you, Lix said quietly. You didn't have to give us even this much. You came here alone, Kim Sora said. You admitted your failures. That takes courage. Now we'll see if your government has the same courage. Lix left Earth and returned to her homeworld. She met with the Xylar High Council. The meeting was difficult. Many council members were proud. They didn't want to apologize. But Lix showed them the data. Their people were suffering. Their economy was dying. Pride was a luxury they couldn't afford. The council voted. By a narrow margin, they agreed. 1 week later, the Xylar Collective issued a formal statement. It was broadcast across the galaxy. They apologized for their silence during humanity's humiliation. They acknowledged that silence in the face of injustice was complicity. They recognized humanity as equals, and they condemned the behavior of the Galactic Assembly at Viridian Prime. The statement was detailed and honest. They didn't try to minimize their failure. They owned it completely. Humanity responded within 24 hours. Trade negotiations began. Within a month, the first human ships arrived at Xylar ports with medicine and equipment. The Xylar economy began to recover. The news spread like fire across the galaxy. Other species watched in amazement. The Xylar had apologized and humanity had forgiven them. There was a path forward after all. Minor species began drafting their own apologies. Species that had no power in the assembly, but had suffered for the arrogance of the major powers. They saw hope. The major powers watched with growing fury. The Crithian Dominion issued a statement condemning the Xylar as traitors. They threatened sanctions against any species that dealt with humanity. Most species ignored the threats. They had seen what happened when the Crithians tried to use military force against humanity. The Dominion's power was mostly bluff, and their threats rang hollow when their own economy was failing. High Counselor Rix Mora called an emergency assembly meeting. She tried to maintain unity. She spoke about the importance of standing together. She warned about the dangers of letting humanity fracture the galactic order. A representative from the Xylar Collective stood up. With respect, High Counselor, the only threat to galactic order came from our own arrogance. Humanity asked for fairness. We gave them contempt. They owed us nothing. Yet now they're willing to trade fairly with those who acknowledge their mistakes. The problem was never humanity. The problem was us. Half the chamber applauded. The other half sat in angry silence. The galaxy was splitting in two, those willing to admit their mistakes and change, and those who clung to pride even as their worlds burned. The cost of contempt kept rising. But now, finally, some were willing to pay the price of change instead. 2 years after the walkout, the galaxy looked completely different. 23 species had followed the Xylar example. They had apologized honestly and completely. They had acknowledged humanity as equals, and in return, humanity had welcomed them. These species formed a new network. They traded fairly with each other. They shared technology. They cooperated on scientific research. And at the center of this network, helping to organize and guide it, was humanity. Quan Jiwan emerged from semi-retirement to become humanity's ambassador at large. She traveled to the worlds that had apologized, speaking at universities, meeting with leaders and helping build this new order. Everywhere she went, people treated her like a hero, the diplomat who had the courage to walk away, the woman who had shown the galaxy that dignity mattered more than convenience. She gave a speech at a Xylar university that was broadcast across the network. Students packed the auditorium. 2 years ago, she said, I walked out of negotiations at Viridian Prime. Many people thought I was making a mistake. They said humanity needed the galaxy more than the galaxy needed us. She paused, looking at the young faces before her. They were wrong, not because humanity is superior, but because relationships must be built on mutual respect. We refused to participate in a system that treated contempt as normal. And look what happened. You suffered, she continued. Your people and ours paid a price, but from that suffering came something better. A new way of working together, based not on power and intimidation but on equality and respect. That was worth the cost. The students gave her a standing ovation. Meanwhile, the old Galactic Assembly was dying. The major powers still held meetings, but fewer species attended each time. Many saw no point. The real decisions were being made in the new network. High Counselor Rick Zamora called another emergency session. The chamber was half empty. She tried to speak about unity and tradition. Her words fell on mostly deaf ears. The Crithian Dominion was suffering most of all. Their economy had collapsed. Their military was weakened after the humiliation at the human border. Their people protested in the streets, demanding that the government apologize to humanity so they could join the new network. But Crithian pride ran deep. The government refused to admit they were wrong. Ambassador Velthar watched all of this from his small apartment. He had lost everything. His position, his reputation, his career. He spent his days thinking about that moment at Viridian Prime when he had called humanity primitive and worthless. He decided he couldn't stay silent any longer. Velthar contacted Quan Jiwan directly. He expected her to refuse his message, but she responded. They arranged a private meeting on a neutral station. When they met, Velthar bowed deeply. I owe you an apology, he said, a personal one, though it means nothing compared to what I did. Jiwan studied him. He looked older, tired, defeated. Go on, she said. I was arrogant, Velthar said. I believed Crithian power made us superior. I thought new species should be grateful for any attention we gave them. I was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. And I've spent 2 years watching my people suffer for my mistakes. Your government still refuses to apologize, Jiwan said. I know, Velthar said. That's why I'm here. Personal remorse means nothing without institutional change. I can't change my government, but I can change what I do with my remaining life. What do you mean? I want to teach, he said. I want to travel to universities across the galaxy and tell my story. Warn future diplomats never to make my mistakes. Show them the cost of contempt. Not asking for forgiveness, just trying to prevent others from causing the same harm. Jiwan was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. That would be valuable. The galaxy needs to understand what happened and why. Velthar started his speaking tour a month later. He called his lecture series, The Cost of Contempt. He didn't sugarcoat his failures. He described exactly what he had said, how he had felt, and what it had led to. Students listened in shocked silence as he explained how one moment of arrogance had changed galactic history, how his assumption of superiority had blinded him to reality, how his contempt had cost countless lives and destroyed an entire order. The lectures were recorded and shared widely. They became required viewing at diplomatic academies across the network. Velthar became a cautionary tale, but also an example of how people could learn from their mistakes. The new network continued to grow. 30 species, then 40, then 50. Each one that joined had to meet the same requirements. Apologize, honestly, acknowledge humanity as equals and commit to fair treatment of all members. Park Hyun-woo, working as Director of Economic Integration, helped coordinate trade and development. The network's economy boomed. Scientific progress accelerated. Peace and stability became the norm. Ambassador Lix became Deputy Secretary General, representing non-human perspectives in the network's leadership. She worked closely with Jiwon to ensure that the new system truly was built on equality. The old Galactic Assembly still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. The major powers still attended, still pretended they were in charge. But everyone knew the real power had shifted to the network. The galaxy had been fractured by human withdrawal. Now it was being rebuilt by human principles, and those who had once mocked humanity now watched from the outside, suffering the consequences of their contempt. The cost kept accumulating. But the galaxy was finally learning the lesson humanity had tried to teach from the beginning. Respect matters. Dignity matters, and contempt always has a price. 3 years after the walkout, everything had changed. The new network now had an official name, the Cooperative Council. 47 species were members. They met regularly at New Earth Station, a massive orbital complex that humanity had built specifically for this purpose. Kwon Ji-won stood before the inaugural session of the Cooperative Council as its first Secretary General. Representatives from dozens of worlds filled the chamber. Unlike the old assembly, there were no raised platforms, no hierarchy. Everyone sat at the same level, looking at each other as equals. 3 years ago, Ji-won began, humanity walked away from a broken system. We didn't do it out of anger. We did it because we refused to participate in a structure that valued power over fairness, that treated contempt as normal. She looked around the chamber. What we've built here isn't a human empire. This is a community of equals. No species is more important than another. No voice matters more than any other. We make decisions together. We share burdens together. We grow together. This is what we asked for at Viridian Prime, she continued. Fair treatment. Mutual respect. Equal partnership. We're grateful to those who had the wisdom and courage to make it real. The chamber erupted in applause. The Cooperative Council thrived. Member species experienced unprecedented growth. Their economies stabilized and then boomed. Scientific collaboration led to breakthrough after breakthrough. Cultural exchange created understanding and friendship. The Council's military was small but effective. Entirely defensive in nature, it protected member worlds from pirates and other threats. Crime in Council space dropped dramatically. Peace became the norm rather than the exception. Meanwhile, the species that had refused to apologize continued to suffer. The Crithian Dominion's economy was in ruins. The Velkai Consortium had fractured, with several member states breaking away to join the Council. The old Galactic Assembly met less and less frequently, attended by fewer and fewer species. High Counselor Rix Mora resigned in disgrace. She issued a statement admitting that she had failed in her duty to maintain fairness and order. It was too late to matter. In the Crithian Dominion, protests grew larger and more frequent. Citizens demanded change. They wanted to join the Cooperative Council. They wanted access to the prosperity that other species enjoyed. They were tired of suffering for their government's pride. The protests turned into a full political crisis. The old government fell. Elections were held. The new government ran on a single platform, apologized to humanity and joined the Council. They won by a landslide. The new Crithian government drafted a formal apology. It was detailed and honest. They acknowledged their historical arrogance. They apologized for Velthar's insults and their own government's refusal to make amends. They recognized humanity and all council members as equals. They requested admission to the Cooperative Council. The council debated for weeks. The vote was close. Many species remembered the Crithian threat of military force. Many still felt the pain of Crithian contempt. Kwon Ji-won cast the deciding vote in favor of admission. The council was built on principles of redemption and growth, she explained. We believe beings can change. The Crithian people have chosen a new path. We should give them the chance to walk it. The Crithian delegation arrived at New Earth Station for their first session. Ji-won personally welcomed them. She shook hands with the new Crithian ambassador, a young woman named Silvara who had campaigned for reform. Welcome, Ji-won said. Your journey here was long and difficult. We're glad you made it. Silvara had tears in her eyes. Thank you for not giving up on us, for showing us a better way. 10 years after the walkout, Park Hyun-woo stood in the same chamber where it had all begun. The old assembly hall on Viridian Prime had been renovated and repurposed as the council's secondary headquarters. The hierarchical seating was gone, replaced with circular arrangements that emphasized equality. Ambassador Lix joined him at the window overlooking the planet below. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Cost," Yunwu replied. That day Jiwan walked out. Many people thought she was making a terrible mistake, throwing away humanity's future. But she understood something the rest of the galaxy didn't. "What was that?" Lix asked. "That some things are worth the cost. Dignity, respect, equality. The galaxy had to pay a price to learn that lesson. But in the end, paying that price made us all stronger." Lix nodded. "The galaxy bears the cost. But unlike 3 years ago, we now pay it willingly, because we've learned what humanity tried to teach us from the beginning. The cost of respect is always less than the cost of contempt." Below them, representatives from 73 species gathered for another council session. Where once there was hierarchy and mockery, now there was collaboration and mutual regard. Where once power determined worth, now character and contribution mattered most. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had simply refused to participate in a broken system until the galaxy was ready to build something better. It had taken time. It had caused suffering. But the galaxy had learned. They had changed. They had grown. The old order was gone, replaced by something founded on principles humanity had believed in all along. Fairness, dignity, mutual respect. Ambassador Velthar, now 70 years old, gave his final lecture that day. He spoke to a room full of young diplomats from dozens of species. His voice was tired, but his message was clear. "Learn from my mistake," he told them. "Contempt is easy. Respect requires effort. But contempt destroys everything it touches, while respect builds something lasting. The galaxy learned this lesson the hard way. Make sure your generation never forgets it." The students applauded. After the lecture, many came to thank him personally, for his honesty, for his courage in admitting his failures, for helping them understand the importance of the work they were preparing to do. The galaxy had borne the cost of contempt. But from that cost came wisdom. From that suffering came growth. And from the ashes of the old order, a better galaxy emerged, one where every species, regardless of size or age or power, could stand as equals. That was worth everything they had paid. And more.